If you had a chance to watch my video about Microtech SOCOM Elite RAM Lock Edition, you are probably already aware of an issue that was discovered where the blade contacts the stop pin, which is also a back of the spring housing, too close to the cutting edge, reducing the number of effective sharpenings that this knife can withstand. Judging by the number of really good technical questions that video received, I have some of the smartest guys in the knife community watching my videos, and if you're not reading their comments, you may be missing out. One of these questions was, hey, you made this witness mark on the sharpening choil when the knife was disassembled. What if it was assembled, would it move farther away from the edge? So this is the answer, and it is a no. It's in the exact same location as it was when I first applied marker in the previous video. But thanks for the great question. For the next segment, I disassembled the knife, removed the spring housing, and now I'm just applying the compression with the spring without the housing right onto the ram head. This gives us a little more food for thought because it illustrates what would happen if you sharpen edge right past that contact point on the housing. You see, the housing is removed and the spring is bumped against the pin on which the housing rests in a normal assembly. And this would be bad because every time you went to close the blade, the belly there would strike against the backstop like so. And believe me, it pains me to do it even those few times here for the camera. I keep calling this component a housing, but it could also be called a spring retention pin. There's the contact point, roughly speaking, and the choil is contacted right around here. Now let's take another look at Mini MSI, where the contact point is actually at a different spot on the blade, right there. There's a protrusion in the profile of the blade that contacts the ram head right there. And that leaves a decent amount of clearance between the spring housing and the edge, about 1/10 of an inch. On SOCOM Elite, the situation is reversed, which kind of is evidence to ingenuity and cleverness of this design because they use the same components but quite different approach. In this knife, there's always clearance between the ram head and the back of the blade, and I measured it to be between 6 and 10 thousandths of an inch of clearance. With the spring housing / stop pin installed, that's what it looks like. That's what does the stopping. I'll get back to all this in a second. I would like to address another concern a viewer had, that his glass breaker housing is rattling. So I'll take the housing out. It is spring loaded, so you have to be careful when you do it because there's a tiny little, maybe 2mm spring in there. And when it's properly installed, it creates spring compression, pushing the glass breaker's housing into the dovetail slot right there. So it is likely that the spring is missing from his housing, and he should really address it with Microtech directly. Some of you guys really impressed me by commenting that as you remove the same amount of material from the entire edge, the clearance between the edge and the backspacer would also increase, therefore there's no problem. So let's visualize together. The rate of distance change nearest to the spring housing is different from that nearest to the backspacer. That is because the movement of the blade is restricted by the pivot. So it can only rotate. It cannot slide toward the backspacer. It can only rotate toward it. The distance between the 2 points of contact would be approximately 2 3/4 inches. This is a 3x3 notepad. I don't have my calipers with me right now, but it's approximately 2 3/4 inch distance. This line here represents the back of the handle, and let's put that measurement in there, making a little engineering drawing here. 2 3/4 inch approximately. And here's the line representing our cutting edge. That starts at the point of contact on the stop pin, and it positions the blade at some angle because we're talking about rotating it as the material being removed. Each time you sharpen the blade, you remove some amount of material. Let's call this distance A and the angle alpha, and the distance B is representing the reduction in clearance between the belly of the blade and the back spacer. So I am trying to find out the rate of change based on how much material is being removed during sharpening. Let's say I want to know for each 1,000th of an inch at the contact point on the stop pin, how much material is being removed toward the front of the blade. I don't want to bore you to death, but I use trigonometry to calculate that the angle change that corresponds to such movement is 0.2 of a degree. Please note, all this is applicable only to the situation where you already sharpened the knife 10 times and now you are past the point of contact. Here comes our formula. Hypotenuse 2.75 inches times tangent of the angle alpha, or 0.2 inches. That gives us computing, and the answer is 9.5 thousandths of an inch. Let me write it up here. Give or take, that's what plus minus is for. Give or take half a thou, so let's call it 10 thousandths of an inch. And that is our approximate rate of this distance reduction per each thousandth of an inch of material removal. So if you remove 1 thousandths over there, you're going to get a reduction of 10 thousandths over here. And since we only have maybe 30 thousandths of an inch distance, that leaves very little space to play with once you sharpen past this point. So why didn't they add material here on the blade like they did on Mini MSI? Who knows? But if you're going to troll me about it, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I imagine my trolls. And if they troll me really bad, I give them a wart right on the tip of their nose. So go ahead, make my day. And the real nasty ones also lose some teeth in the process. And I mean imaginary, of course. And another sentiment my viewers expressed frequently was, why didn't they just take the original SOCOM Elite and move the clip to the back of the handle, like they did on SOCOM Delta? Well, my understanding is that the two holes with screws in them on the back of Gen 3, I think, so I don't have it with me. Anyway, on the one I showed in the other video, I think the spacing between the holes is the same as on this, so you can just grab yourself somewhere a replacement clip of this nature and move it over there. I don't know if Microtech sells them or you have to look for an aftermarket clip, I'm just saying. Yeah, the clip that comes with a regular SOCOM will not work in the back position, but this clip will. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, if I'm missing something. It's all good. And now that I answered some of your most important questions, I have one of my own. So this retails for $322, and the MSI Mini Signature, yeah, it is a Signature series, retails for $394. So my question to the Microtech collector's expert is, what am I getting for the extra $70 here? I now disassemble and played with this knife extensively, and I see no differences in like material selection, construction quality, none of that stuff. There may be some differences in the quality of the edge, but this is a near perfect edge. I'll show you at the end of the video my microscope footage. So really hard for me to understand why this knife is less expensive than this knife, and I'm kind of wondering if anybody knows what the plans are for the Mini MSI as far as releasing a more budget oriented version. So let me know in the comments, and let's take a look at this beautiful edge under the microscope. Here's the edge on that SOCOM Elite. If I had to estimate, the angle here is pretty steep. It's at least 20, maybe 24 degrees, somewhere in that zone. And as we slide toward the tip, the angle starts to decrease a little bit. You will see in a second. The bevel is a little wider at the tip. Very nicely executed tip, very pointy, symmetrical, fantastic. Really good job here. And here's the edge on Mini MSI. I really don't see a huge difference, maybe slightly finer finishing media here. So in other words, they honed it and stropped it as opposed to the edge on SOCOM. So, and this blade being 2 3/4 inches and the price being $70 more, I guess I can estimate it cost me $20 per inch of their excellent honing and stropping job.